Hello, students, and welcome to today's online class. I'm Miss Calista, and as you know, I'll be teaching you biology. Now, you must have heard of the word biology as a subject, and I know that the meaning of the subject. But sometimes when you hear the word biology as a subject, some of you become scared. You might feel like, oh, biology is this subject that has big names, or because biology is just you and I, the study of humans, living things, microorganisms, anything that has life. All right, look at my hand. I have three things. I have a mirror, actually not for you to look at any beauty or fashion. I have a water can, and then I have a plantain, a source of food. Now, biology is a science that cuts across these three things. In short, it goes beyond these three things. The first one is the plantain, a source of milk. Biology is a science that tells you how this plantain was produced, photosynthesis. You must have heard that in your junior secondary school or your grade in your basic school. Then biology is also a science that tells you when you eat this piece of plantain, how it's broken down in your body, how it generates energy in form of ATP, and so on and so forth. How you need this to grow, to survive. Okay, now let's look at the next one, the mirror. Now the mirror is not for you to beautify yourself actually, but you can actually look at yourself and see a reflection of yourself. And why do you see a reflection of yourself? Why do you see yourself the way you are? That is the science of genetics, a branch of biology. A science that makes you understand that you are the way you are because you look like your parents. Yes, you are actually what your parents, the genes your parents have given, transmitted to you. The genes in you are actually as a result of what you inherited from your parents. And then lastly, the water can. Yes, what does this water can tell you? This water can is all about water, life. You cannot do without water. Every living thing, even non-living things. Yes, in the production of plastic, rubber, all these things, they need water. So that tells you that water is source of life. Now, the science of biology actually cuts across these three things and beyond. I just brought in some branches of biology here. So you could imagine the variety of branches of biology that we have and the variety of problems that each of these branch can solve. So let's dive right into today's subject, biology. I would love for you to define biology. I would love for you to explain it in the understanding or meaning you know. And that would call for a little activity from you. Before I explain, I would love for you to take down this first question. It's an activity. We'll just answer it briefly. The first one, what is that common word that cuts across the meaning of biology? No matter who wants to define biology in any form, the person must use that common word. What is that key word? I want you to write it down. All right, the next question I want you to do for me is this. I want you to look at the careers in biology. There are so many branches of biology. What are those careers, about three of them that you aim? You can just list three, even if you don't want to be a science student. You can list three careers in biology and pick out one that actually cuts your fancy or catches your fancy. That branch of biology that you feel like you've seen other persons follow that career path and you actually as you admire them maybe because they solve a problem because of their in contribution to the society. You can just write that down. And then lastly, I want you to look at what are those characteristics of living things that you possess that makes you a living thing that something else that you call a non-living thing does not possess. And then also what is and what you call a living thing, the characteristics it doesn't have that makes it a non-living thing. I also want you to look at what are those characteristics or traits you have in your family, amongst your sibling, in your class, amongst your peers in school, that makes you stand out more, like it gives you an upper hand because you have that attribute or characteristics. Can you write it down? More like a unique trait you possess that makes you better off when you compare yourself with your peers. You can say, oh, I have this thing and it has given me so advantage over my classmates in previous times. Can you just briefly do that activity and then we're going to continue? All right, so I think you're done. Let's look at what you have. Okay, the first one, I think you wrote something about biology having a common meaning or a common word in the definition of biology is that it is the study of life. Thank you. Kudos, thumbs up, bravo. I really love that. Was just the answer I wanted to hear. That for you to define biology, you must mention the word life. Bio means life and logy means study. The second question I asked you, careers in biology or careers in biology as a science. Okay, I can see medicine, I can see is that dentistry, I can see gynecology, I can see so many. Okay, let's work with these three you wrote. Now, what does it tell you? That's and then the next question was which of them which of them interests you, appeals to your interest. Okay, I think you wrote medicine, and then why? They save life. Very good. You are very correct. And it's a joyful thing to see a doctor in anyone in the medical line saving a life. It's a really heroic thing to do, and there's nobody that will not look up to them and want to emulate such in his or her own career. So I really say thumbs up to that. Nice one. Now, what does it tell you? It tells you that biology solves problem in the society. And then lastly, I ask you to look at some traits you have as a living thing. Yes, you can move, you can feed. Non-living things cannot do this thing. Nice one. Thumbs up. Now, it now tells you that I asked the last one, what do you have over your peers, or a unique feature you have that some of your siblings don't have or your classmates don't have. I think I can see something like you wrote when it comes to is that your handwriting, that you have a unique handwriting, and that gives you an upper hand when you write essays in your class. Okay, that's a nice one. What does this tell you? That with these traits or this unique feature, you've seen that you have a good writing, you've worked upon it, and it has given you good, more extra points when you write your essays. Your teachers commend you. They might also give you extra mark for having a good writing. Then amongst your siblings, you notice that you are one person that maybe you are taller than your sibling, and with your height, you've been able to help them in carrying out tasks that are related to maybe a high place, or any tax that they may need the advantage of your height. Yes, that's a good thing. Now, and the height you have, some of your siblings don't have the because they did not inherit that gene from your parents, the knowledge of genetics, which is a branch of biology. So you can see that biology has come in to solve problems. Aside that, people also generate provide or produce drugs, medication as a result of knowledge of biology, like some antibiotics has been produced with the knowledge of the fact that some fungi can produce some antibiotics, like penicillin is a fungi that has produced penicillin. So yes, you've been able to, with the help of this activity I gave you, you've been able to understand the branch of the meaning of biology, some branches of biology that has resulted to some careers in biology. And then we've looked at how some of these careers have helped us to solve problems. Even though we touched an aspect of living and non-living things, we'll still look at it as we go further as another subtopic under this topic. So let's dive right into another subtopic in this topic, which is scientific method. And when you talk about scientific method, it just tells you the approaches that scientists use to conduct an experiment. Now, have you ever wondered trying a new meal? Have you ever thought of visiting a new place for the first time? What was the experience like? Initially, you'd be like, you were so excited to try the meal, right? You were so excited to go to the new place, right? Good. Now, when you actually ate that meal, what did you do? You first of all tried to get the test, tried to see if it was like you were using your test board, your tongue, trying to with your brain, trying to make out an experience out of the meal. Oh, is it a sweet meal? Is it tasty? Is it nice? The same thing with the experience when you visited a new place. You were so excited when you got there. You started observing. Wow, you're looking around, looking around. Wow, look at this. I love this. You want to? Let me go and try. And then you're like, look at this. Let me go and try this out. You get. Now, all those things you were doing for the first time, that is what we call, you were trying to observe that place. You were trying to observe that new meal, that meal you were eating for the first time, the new place you visited. And what you're using to observe, you use your senses. That's what we call senses. In science, we call them the five, or in biology, we call them the five senses. You know them, you've been taught the eye, the skin, the nose, the ear. These are sense organs you use to observe. For the meal, you use your tongue. Are you following? To test. You also use your nose to perceive, this smells nice. And your brain was, interpreting. Are you following? You also use your eyes, because before you eat something, your eyes also find it palatable. You get. And you're like, oh, this looks lovely. I can't wait to test. I can't wait to devour. The same thing with the place you visited. You were observing with your senses. You looked around with your eyes. You observed, you interpreted rather with your brain. And also you were trying to hear. Well, people have said a lot of things about this place. Maybe when you were watching something there, somebody said, oh, have you tried this? You decided to go there, you heard, and you wanted to go and see with your own. So all those things are what you used to observe, your senses. Now, scientists also do that in the method of what? Science approach. But what is science? Before we look at the method scientists use, we want to know what science is. Science is just what? A systematic approach to solving problems. And that is the method that scientists use. For anybody to be called a scientist, the person solve problems using this systematic approach. And what are this systematic approach? We have the methods they use are the approaches like observing. They first of all observe. They tend to make a guess out of that thing they observe. So a guess might be true or it might not be true. We call it a reasonable guess, what we call hypothesis. Oh, I've visited this place. I guess it's nice. Or before you even go, you start thinking of how the place will look like. And then you're making a guess, but you're not sure. We are not sure if the place is good. So after you've observed, you've noted down some things, and then those guesses you made, you're like, oh, maybe if I've tried this one, maybe what if next time if I go there, you want to go and because you have some guesses, some things that you are not sure, you might want to go there again and try out if those guesses, what we call reasonable guess, or we call it hypothesis, is true. Now, when you have a guess and you want to subject that guess, which whether is true or false, to testing, or you have to subject it to what we call experiments, that is testing if your guess is actually true or not. That is, you now experiment. You might not go there again, or you might not test that meal again. And so actually it's nice, but this is what I observe. It's a little bit pepperish. My guess was right. I think if it's cold, it's better when it's cold. When I eat the meal, when it's cold and when it's hot. These are your guesses and you're experimenting to check if it's true or false. Now, when you've tested or experimented on your guess and it's true, you accept that guess. You accept that hypothesis. Now, you open that hypothesis or that guess to other scientists to carry out. For example, you want to check if the use of fertilizer on plants while growing them is going to have a positive effect on the growth of the plant. When you've experimented, you notice that it did, but there's some things it did not do. Maybe it delayed, maybe it had effects, and then you open that guess when it's true that your guess was right. You open it to other scientists to try out. When a hypothesis has been tested over and over and found to be true beyond all reasonable doubt, it now becomes a theory. Now, a theory is just a group of hypotheses that have been tested by different scientists and found to be true. Now, on further test of a hypothesis and it's not true, you reject it. Sometimes when you test it and it's true, and some other scientists test it, they can modify it, they can change it. Are you following? Don't worry, all these things I'm saying, we're going to actually use the video to support our learning. I'm also going to bring in some pictures to make you understand better. So, after you've tested the theory up and up, you've tested the theory repeatedly, and you've also given this your result and findings to other scientists to test, and then they've tested it and found the same result you've gotten to be accurate, then it moves into being a principle or a law. So a principle or a law is that verified theory that has been tested beyond all reasonable doubt and found to be consistently what's correct. And then everybody accepts it, generalize it as a principle or a law. Now, these are the steps that scientists must take or follow to investigate or to solve a problem systematically in a science way. Now, there's also something we call a control experiment. That sometimes you may be conducting an experiment. You might also have two setups for that particular experiment. One is that you are using all the factors, putting all of them into place the way it should be while testing. For example, when I said you are trying to check if fertilizer, used to grow a plant will have positive effect on the growth of the plant, or it will have any effect on the maybe height, the fruits, the flowers of these plants. And then because you want to do this on maybe on a beans seedling or a beans plant in a potted vessel, you are going to do the same thing for the second setup. So you're having a setup A and setup B. Setup A is your experiment where you have your bean seedling in a pot, you have water, you have soil, you have sunlight, all the factors of germination is there. And then you now have your fertilizer. That is why the experiment is to check if fertilizer affects the growth of what? Beans seedling. So you are putting your fertilizer. But in the second setup, you have everything, but you don't have you're not using fertilizer. That one is called your control. The essence of not putting your fertilizer is that in a control experiment, all factors are kept constant except one factor which is being tested. And that factor that is being tested in this case is the fertilizer you are adding to check how it will affect the growth of plants. So that factor that is being tested is the fertilizer. Hence, in your control, you are not going to put it there. You are going to make it a variable, meaning you are going to change it. You're not going to have fertilizer. While you experiment, which is what you're trying to test, we have that fertilizer. Then, while you are growing the same bean seedling, the same potted plant, the same soil, everything, sunlight, the same exposure, but you're not going to have what? A fertilizer in your control. But you're going to have a fertilizer in your other setup, which is the experiment. So setup A is your experiment, like you have in my picture. I'm also going to use a video to illustrate, because I don't believe in talking without illustration or videos to support my students' learning. So, like you have in my picture, you have this experiment setup for A has everything with fertilizer. Experiment setup for B doesn't have fertilizer. And you might be asked, what is now the control variable? The control variable is that variable that you altered. Water was there in A and B. Soil was there, bean seedling was there, but there was something that was not in B, which is your control, and that is fertilizer. So fertilizer is your control what variable, because you removed it intentionally to see how it will affect the growth of this plant that did not use fertilizer, which is your control, and the one that you use fertilizer, which is experiment. At the end of the day, the results you get is your what controlled what is your independent what variable. Sorry, is your dependent variable. What does this mean? The it is dependent on the fact that you did not put the fertilizer. So once you put the fertilizer, the growth of the height of the plant is what a dependent variable. Why? The growth of the height increased as a result of fertilizer. So the growth of the height of plant was dependent on fertilizer. The fertilizer you did not put in your control is your what control variable, also called your independent variable. Are you following? It is not the what, it is the variable that is not depending on anything. In short, it is that variable that will bring about a result on another variable, which is the height of plants. Are you following? So that fertilizer is your independent variable, and it is the variable that you removed in your control experiments. Independent variable, control variable is the same thing. Why the one that's brought about why the results you got as a result of this control variable being present is the dependent variable. The height of plants. They saw that the plants were growing taller or growing faster as a result of fertilizer. Hence, fertilizer is dependent on, hence the height of plants, or the growth in the height of plants, is dependent on adding fertilizer. Why the second setup that you did not add fertilizer, their height was just, the growth of the plants was just steady. Can you now understand? So that is a control experiment. All right, we'll be going on to the second subtopic under this topic, which is what we call levels of organization of life. Now, just like you know how it is in every organization, in a school, you have the principal as the head, the teachers, other staff, and then the students, prefects, and then the students. So, in biology, you also have levels of organization. Every life starts with a cell. That's the first level of organization, followed by the tissue, then the organs, the system, and then a complete organism. So I give a student a mnemonics I call CTOSO. CTOSO. As you can see in the picture there, that picture, see, when you look at this CTOS, the cell, the tissue, the organ, the system, and the picture I have there, I have a picture that shows you cells in plants and cells in animal. An example of a cell, we have the sperm cell in male and the egg cell in female. Also, the egg. Do you know that you can see some cells with your naked eyes? Yes. You know, most cells are microscopic. You use a microscope. But there's a cell you can actually see with your naked eyes. I'll give you a minute to guess. Okay, I had a feeling you might attempt, but you might not get it. Now you eat egg. Yes, egg, egg. The egg of a bird. The egg you eat is actually a cell, and you can see the egg with your ordinary eye. You don't need a microscope. It's a cell. So that egg is a cell. Just like in females, female or women, we produce eggs, and then during sexual intercourse, the sperm meets with the egg, and there is a fertilization. So the cell is an example of the egg rather is an example of a cell in animals. Then we have the sperm. We also have the blood cells, like red blood cell, white blood cell. These are cells. They also have the cells of the eyes, like the rod cells and cone cells cone cells enables us to see color things, while the rod cells enables us to see white and black images. Also in plants, we have cells. What are these cells? We have the cells of the leaves, the cells of the stem, the cells of like the xylem cells, the phloem cells, cells that help in conducting water are xylem, cells that help in moving food are phloem. So you see it in my notes and in the video I'll play. But before we go further, because of want of time, I kind of introduce those, but I will still start with it in our next class, and I will make sure I explain the meaning of cell, how group of cells form tissue, group of tissues that perform the same function forms organs like the sense organs like I've mentioned, how group of organs form the what? A system, like the digestive system, respiratory, look at them, and then finally how all these systems come together to form a complete human being or a complete plant, as the case may be. We're also going to look at some microorganisms. So I want you to give me a recap of today's lesson. We started with the meaning of biology. We looked at the branches of biology. We looked at the common word that cut across the meaning of biology. We looked at some careers in biology that have helped us solve problems. We also looked at the method of science approach, or the scientific method that scientists use to solve problem. We stated them or called them based accordingly from observation to hypothesis to experiment to theory to laws and experiment to theory to laws or principle, and then how a scientist would report any scientific or experiment, stating the method used, the aims, the materials, the procedure, and then analyze the results and give a conclusion, or what we call an inference. And then we went further to introduce the topic we call levels of organization of life. So with this, I would love for you to do well to look at the homework I'm going to drop or upload for you, and see you in my next class. Do stay safe and stay well. Bye.